Tēnā koutou. So it's a privilege to be here today amongst these three stalwarts that are going to be entertaining, sharing, caring and teasing out a whole lot of kōrero. They already started last night and I had to call them to halt and say we'll leave it for tomorrow morning. So how we're going to do the panel, just so you understand, we're going to stay seated so that you get the knuckle of all their kōrero. I'm going to encourage that they bring it all out together. And then hopefully there's some questions that come up later on behind us online. So the kōrero is the challenges and triumphs in bridging cross-sector collaboration. And the key goal for the panel this morning is to unravel the mongrel, the challenges, in a building and meaningful and clearly cheeky way, but more also talk about the sustainable relationships amongst those multiple stakeholders and the multiple dimensions that they come across, and to share, most importantly, the successes within the working collaboratively and probably some of those great collisions that they come across on a day-to-day basis as well. So kia ora. We're first going to hand it over to Jen, who's rearing to go. So Jen, I'm going to leave it open to you, and my role is to merely facilitate and to motivate if we have any quiet moments, but I'm sure we won't.
Kia ora. Kia ora TV, kia ora tātou. Ko mihi ake ngā mihi, nā reira me tīmata tātou, mātou, tō mātou nei kaupapa. You know, I thought it was important to pick up some of the threads from yesterday's kōrero, to contextualise and hoi no hei kīnaki mō tō mātou nei kaupapa, mō mātou nei whakaaro, e harei te tāhai kōrero, he mea hei kīnaki I tō mātou kaupapa. So there were a few speakers yesterday that I did take bits from their kōrero that were relevant to our kaupapa today. You know, Pēni Henere talked about Whānau Ora needing to be in everything that government does. Tā Mason's whānau voices. We need a joined up system so we don't get shunted from one agency to another. Mere-Peka, you spoke about collaborating and co-design, collaborating around co-design and delivery. Richard Kennedy's, he put up a Mandela quote yesterday that really touched me. Poverty is not an accident. It is man-made. And I'll put it to you and expect that we all agree that the state of whānau well-being for those who we serve is not an accident. I don't have time for the detail, but I would say that the tribunal briefs are a great source of evidence to suggest that it was not an accident. It's man-made and can be removed by the actions of human beings. So I think this is a good way to open our discussion around collaborating for outcomes for whānau well-being.
Ngaroma, would you like to respond to anything that resonates with you out of that you agree with, completely disagree with, or...?
One of the things that's come through this morning in the kōrero that I got from George was the most impactful work in our communities is coming from partnerships. Now, for us, we're looking at the state of our relationships constantly, and everyone here who's in a collective or is providing services must be doing the same thing. And look, it's been really, really difficult at times for us to maintain the relationships required to work with our whānau in a really effective way that works for whānau. So that is a constant piece of work that's always ongoing. It's never going to be perfect. When we talk about collaboration in the wider sense, what we're also talking about is very often different languaging, and different, we're going in different directions. So at some point we're working with DHBs, working with PHOs, you know, whatever space we happen to want to collaborate in at the time. It's once again building the relationships that makes the difference.
But I'm hearing that their relationships are difficult. I know as whānau and Māori we can sometimes be a little difficult, but from the challenges that you're confronting, is it because of the heroine addiction or link to the funders that are our biggest challenges, or is it that we are needing to redo our models? You're all, I noticed last night in our brief, you all came up with similar comments. What's your whakaaro? And you know, jump in at any time if you've got something else to add.
I'm just going to jump in.
Couple.
There are multiple levels, and our whānau are staying in the same position. The collaborating in between looks like everything that was on the mongrel picture that George used. But on the ground, it's taxing. It's taxing. And unless you have, and this is at all levels, kaiarataki up. Our leaders are doing their leader thing out there in our regions, and recently Ngāti Porou was part of the regional kaupapa with Manaaki Tairāwhiti, which is a little bit in the briefing. I'm not part of that at that level, but what I can say is 153 million is nothing to sneeze about, and at a regional level it's kind of a first from what I've heard and seen in the media. But where does that meet, other than to say in terms of the benefits of what is happening at that level? We as Whānau Ora inside of our region can take some reprieve that at least our leaders who are in that level of leadership practiced. 3 years of practice for 153 million gives us a little bit of not only leverage, but they've built those platforms. So and in the CI space on the ground, we're able to stand on some of them, the relationship to leverage. So what is the role of partnering and collaborating? It's all of it. To being able to see the platform, step on and off it, leverage it, and then use it to protect fiercely what we have all worked to do to ensure that our whānau get some notice in the strategies at all sorts of levels.
Do you think that the value and what you do on the ground with the whānau is appreciated, understood? Do you think that may be why there's not partnerships, or is there just no connect? And I'm talking internally, when you talked about leadership and those that are in charge of, I guess, varying degrees of wealth that could be helping our whānau. Is that because there's a perceived lack of connect or lack of understanding or appreciation of the value that you as the workers, the providers, Whānau Ora represents for us all?
I think that people actually do see the value of Whānau Ora. It's power. It's about people wanting the power of how a program or how a piece of work will end up, who can claim the kudos from it. You know, so I think the resistance to partnership in our communities is who's holding power.
I'll just jump in there. I think, I'll put this out there, I think we're still fixated on counting numbers, meeting our own contracted outcomes, and getting a bigger piece of the pie that's being dished up in the same way. And I'll say that I think we're all caught up in this chaos that we call collaboration. There's the government with policy, the ministries and agencies with the execution of that policy, and then us delivering in the way that it's dished up. I think, in my experiences in Te Taitokerau, this is what's driving our collaboration, rather than what may work better for whānau.
So authenticity is an opportunity and a challenge. Being true to ourselves. So what is the solution then in turning those, I guess, those boulders around so that we can achieve our WO2? How do we achieve our whānau ora, our whānau tino ora? What is it that you suggest is the way forward around those problems?
Okay, I'll just add to that. I think that context that I just alluded to, the result of that is that we have all sorts of delivery challenges, boundary issues, ad hoc successes, and fragmented delivery to whānau. I think all our discussions around an holistic whānau wellbeing framework will not translate into outcomes holistic for whānau unless we start to collaborate with the purpose being whānau and not maintaining our positions, maintaining our funding, maintaining our control or our place in that space. And to all of us out here, I'll say, we can lead this. Whānau Ora can lead this. We have an approach that sees the individual in the context of the whānau, that places the whānau at the centre of that design and that delivery. And it's underpinned by our tikanga. Moreover, it is an approach that has been fashioned from the work that the Whānau Ora people, us, have been doing in the field. And this is where the whānau-centred approach has grown from. It's from the work that we have been doing already. It belongs to us, and it is ours. And Tā Mason, I want to say this. You raised a suggestion yesterday around whānau leadership, that perhaps we may have a kawa, whānau kawa. Perhaps, Tā Mason, we need a collaborating for whānau kawa.
Ka pai. Whakaaro, anyone?
I'm going to just pose put a statement out there, and that is, and very recently too now, I'm currently wearing a few hats, and one of them is on the ground directly with whānau, and we don't have to create anything. Whānau have the kawa. Whānau can be handed the keys to their own destiny and drive from the get-go. The only thing that is stopping that is the individuals or those inside of collectors that cannot see that. And one example that came to mind when you're talking about the internal struggle and are we seeing all those different levels and where whānau are exactly at, who are supposed to be the centre or the drivers of their own destiny. And when you have those hui and have stunned looks on faces that whānau don't have a birth certificate, it tells you, just in the body language, that there's some learnings and some knowings that need to happen, probably from a mongrel kind of perspective, because we don't have the time. Te whakaako I e rā kaupapa. So if we're in the spaces and we all need to know what that space is, and trust it and each other in that space, and therein lies the battle.
Ngaroma, ia tō whakaaro I hoa?
One of the things we did right at the very beginning of our collaboration was to build a tikanga and kawa document, so everybody played in the sandpit nicely together. And it's worked to a certain extent because we also had to understand what it means to be behaving in a particular way with each other. So I think the whole building of a kawa, I agree that we've got whānau that have their kawa that runs through for generations. And to a certain extent a kawa approach works as long as everyone's on the same page about it.
Ka pai. I'm going to hold that whakaaro. We've got some questions coming through and I've had to sort of take pictures. One of the questions for the panellists, are there any triumphs that the panellists have experienced with bridging cross-sector collaboration that's real for whānau? And what do these triumphs look like?
I mentioned a little earlier I said something about ad hoc successes. And there are obviously some good collaborations happening. And my comments are about generally what the landscape looks like. In Te Taitokerau, we have I always look at it, and it's fixing up the houses of whānau. And you can see the difference it makes. You can see the difference. You hear the whānau talking about the difference it makes for their lives. Now, that's a collaboration that's working. So there are many examples of successful collaborations, but they are hard-forged relationships with all those challenges that we know are inherent in collaborating with others. But there are examples.
Kia ora.
One of the things too, Jen, we have to be mindful of is not letting our Whānau Ora work end up being a program that, or an initiative or a piece of work that that has, when it's not whānau driven, longevity. So I agree. The housing space is really important. All of the areas that we're currently working in. Men's programs, all the types of work that we're required to collaborate in, I have a concern around us devolving into program type pieces of work.
In reaction to the funding body. Yeah, well, what are your triumphs? Got to be some.
Yeah, and I guess in this context they would be small, but there's lots of small triumphs. For whānau, predominantly for the whole collective, moving towards working internally well, and then out from there. And then lots of pockets of where we have health organisations, for example, inside of our collective, who have, again, built long relationships in the health arena. So we were able to step straight onto that platform in terms of the respiratory space for our babies. And in our rohe that is quite significant in terms of their hospitalisation, etc. So we didn't have to have the long courting around the relational stuff. We could leverage off our leaders who have gone before us to do that. So that's working for us really, really well.
See, from outside looking in, what I see is you have huge triumphs. You have the intel, you have the access. And you are often, and sometimes when we're in a mahi so much, we forget. We forget you are the go-to. Whānau Ora is the go-to kaupapa for everything. And no one else has intel like that than the Whānau Ora kaupapa, the Whānau Ora movement. So from my perspective, I would imagine that there'd be a heck of a lot of intel, data, that you have that whānau trust this movement with. And surely that's got to put you in not only a position of strength, but a position of uniqueness. It holds Indigenous uniqueness, but it also holds the critical starting block for a lot of our whānau who have been in that state of paralysis post-trauma. So, do you celebrate that, and what do you think is potentially possible with those strengths and that insight and that intel?
Can I add? In terms of the intel or what is shared by whānau with Whānau Ora or our kaimahi on the ground, what comes with that is an obligation. And herein lies the battle. Because we do have, in our region, the children's teams, the oranga tamarikis, the health agencies, etc., knocking on the door because they want to be seen to be working with Whānau Ora. But at this time, lots of that is pushed to different levels because our whānau are not ready to have you be seen mixing with their what they have shared with Whānau Ora yet. You have to earn your stripes to come to that table. And that might just be my perception of it, but I would never just say, sweet, you want to be with Whānau Ora, you can come along and you can... No, you're already doing that at the children's. You're already doing it at other tables. You don't do that at this table. At this table, whānau drive their aspirations. They're not here for your outcomes. So holding that banner up for whānau is a constant. It's being being aware too, and having enough foresight to know when they are coming with, well, actually, we want to give something, not just come and take. Nā mea.
Adding to your kōrero too, Peggy, I think we have a different level of information. You're calling it intel, but you know, stories about the whānau that nobody else has, and we have a huge responsibility with
the
that.
obligation.
Why I'm saying we have a different type of information is that we have touched the hearts of the whānau that we're working with, rather than the problem that we're working on with the whānau. And so that gives us a very privileged position.
Yeah, for me also, it steps right outside the boundaries of what can be bought.
Aye. So
cannot
elaborate
be
on
bought.
that. So
Contracts do not, they've been unsuccessful. They cannot get the stories of whānau out there in the public, or in the intel that's required. That's what makes this approach what it is. It is the key because we are trusted in that space. Relationships start in that space. And that honona begins around that share. And it can happen quickly if you know how to do that well, or it could take a little while. But once whānau engage you and accept you in that space, then you have the obligation as to benefit their journey and their goals when and where you ask them to use to move them, if it's required. But yeah, there's no amount of money. That money wouldn't even be in the equation. It would be, if you're wanting to work with our whānau, or with us for that matter, what do you bring to the table that will benefit them directly on their journey? Because to be blunt, our kaiarataki in some instances are being used by departments to do their justice work, to do their FGC work, to do all those, because they're seen to be, you've got this relationship with whānau, you can drag them along to this and we can get those outcomes met. Well, sorry, it doesn't cut it. Because you have a role to play, and if you don't know how to engage whānau to come on board with you in your kaupapa, sorry about it. Sorry about it.
is that a general consensus?
Yep.
Yeah, I think that leads back to what I was trying to describe as our experiences in Te Taitokerau, is what is the purpose of those collaborations? What's driving it? It's been driven by our own organisational needs. And that's, I think, largely where we are at in the landscape of collaboration at the moment. In Te Taitokerau, we have a collaboration map. I was going to bring it, but to look at it, it is scarily confusing. And all the same players are in all different collaboration groups. We're all in the same, but there's many, many different groupings. And I would say that these groupings, we are, as I said earlier, are largely driven by all things other than whānau well-being. And so we've got a long way to go. And I'm not saying by any measure that it's not doable and we're not doing it. It's about where we are in the phase of collaborating for whānau well-being. And I just want to say one last thing, Debbie. I think
You go, Jen.
that we need to stop thinking about Whānau Ora as an initiative. It's a vehicle for whole system change. And that's where I see us.
Kapuan. There's one question that seems to have the most likes. What are the factors that enhance the commissioning of kaupapa Māori within the public sector? I know you're all jumping to answer that.
trying to work out what it means.
Yes. So what are the factors that enhance the commissioning of kaupapa Māori? While you think of that, name me one great, because we're hearing a lot of collisions.
Yes.
And you know, and we heard before about the idea of obstacles being something that can get us to where we want to be. Name me one great collaboration obstacle, one great one in your area. One that you would go out to someone studying tomorrow and say, now this is a collaboration you should look after, a partnership, a person again thinking across the sectors.
Can you come back to me on that?
I can come back.
I'm stuck in
Anyone
that
got an
question.
answer yet?
I'll give it a go.
Good girl. Dive in.
So we have had a really big piece of work happening in the cervical screening space in Rotorua, and it's around Tale Morrison's Smear Your Mare campaign. And we've all had a look at how we can get behind and get more kawahaka women screened before the Nationals next year. So we've gotten together with Korowai Aroha, who is our GP provider group, and Ngati Peggy, our Rūnanga, who has also got a GP service, and many other people from the community who've come in to contribute information, resources, access to screening. It's been a really outstanding success. It's made a huge difference to our DHB levels around women being screened. Whānau has been on board with that. So, you know, the opportunity in this collective impact or collaboration space is enormous, and it touches lots and lots of different areas that we can work in. Every aspect of our work will be enhanced by working together.
I'm going to jump back to the original question, which was around some of the factors that contribute to that enhanced commissioning. I just want to say this. Ta Mason's presentation yesterday afternoon around those whānau voices. And there was a set of factors that were in there that came from whānau about what they want, how they want to be treated, how they want to be, to be worked alongside. And I think in there is a really good example of what we need to know if we are commissioning for kaupapa Māori alongside whānau. Because those are their voices that came out yesterday. And we all hear that. It was lovely to see it so comprehensively shared with us yesterday afternoon.
Just to add on to that, Jen, recently our team did a rangahau. The task was go out and talk to whānau. This was before the decision was made, which CI project we were going to take. So we did that, and then did the whole, actually had to look at the findings of that research. So we didn't skew it to health, education or any other questions, just asked them, in your community, what would make your whānau happier? And that line of questioning was only about 4 questions to that. The stunning response from those findings was that the word whanaungatanga was mentioned more than any other word, repeatedly, and in their discussions as they were filling out and talking to us and having a sausage at the kairi mall was that we can sustain anything, but our system, our own system, our internal whānau systems are weakened. So regardless of yes, there's P and there's methamphetamine, you know, and some risk factors in our community. For example, we can't let our children walk to the shop anymore. But if we had a stronger whānau system, that wouldn't exist. We wouldn't have those fears. It was a very interesting exercise, but what I wanted to get to around the point of that is when we ask and we hear voice, what is then our response going to be? Because quite frankly, we were not able to capitalise on the capture of that voice at that time. That was probably the only time the mongrel in me came out. Only once? Adam, crew?
We've got a couple of minutes to round up, and what I'd like you to do is one thing in the last couple of minutes, and he's going to give me the eye, and I've seen that eye yesterday, and it's not nice. But what you would like to do, if you're on the other side, we would tip it upside down, name one thing you would do differently from being inside those agencies, whether they're funders, whether they're regulators or whatever, one thing from the insight you have from the whānau-centric perspective, from the ngākau of the whānau, what would you do? What would you tell that government to do differently? Or that private, whatever?
Rather than looking at what we cost the government, have a look at what we save the government.
Ka poem. Ka poem. Beautiful.
I would say, as a whānau talking to the government, talk to me differently. Talk to me in a way that I can understand and how it lands here for me rather than here for me. Some of the very best pieces of work that we're doing have come from whānau ideas, not from initiatives that are being driven from anywhere else.
Yeah. I just ditto Jen. Yep. Yeah, I agree.
Ka poem. Any closing comments? We've got 1 minute left.
Yeah.
Any recommendations to anyone that's newly coming into this kaupapa, the successes that are coming in and how to navigate around, and again, in a sentence, sorry whānau, I think he's making us 45 seconds now.
Well, you know, Penny Henry said yesterday, make recommendation. Make a recommendation to the government. I think what we're discussing today, within there is a recommendation.
Which is one line.
Which is, let Whānau Ora lead the collaborative space for the well-being of our whānau. Let us lead it.
Yeah, support that. No, that's it.
Consensus?
Yep.
Kia ora rā. I'd like to thank our panellists for sharing. Thank you for listening. I'm not sure if we're meant to open up to any questions, but he is saying kua mutu. Nō reira te whānau, tēnā koutou, tēnā rā koutou katoa. Well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Look at us.